agreement with Mexico, but will not give more specifics about it. Mexico's foreign minister has denied the existence of any secret deal. Michigan judicial nominee Michael Bogren pulled his name from consideration this week, and one senator isn't sad to see him go. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri said Bogren compared a Catholic family's religious views to the KKK in Bogren's defense of the city of East Lansing, Michigan. Bogren was an attorney for the city in a case against the Tennis family. At issue was the family's decision not to have same-sex weddings on the Tennis family farm.
You think that the Catholic families pointing to the teachings of their church is equivalent to a KKK member invoking Christianity? That's your view?
From a legal perspective,
you can just give me a yes or no answer on that.
From a legal perspective, Senator,
can you say no?
There is no distinction.
Oh, so the answer is yes.
Speaking Wednesday on Washington Watch with Tony Perkins, Senator Hawley said he gave Bogren the opportunity to say that he made a mistake and or the comparison was out of line.
And it wasn't just that comment, Tony, as you know. I mean, he made these statements throughout the litigation. He made them to the press. He attacked this poor Catholic family personally, dragged their names through the mud. He said that they were trying to dress up their arguments and I'm quoting him now, shimmering robes of righteousness. That's what he said about their faith. I mean, you talk about just nasty personal attacks.
Bogren says Hawley's attacks are utterly untrue, adding an unfounded personal attack derailed his judgeship bid. Hawley's response?
Somebody who can't see that this is wrong, who can't see that this takes away or at least threatens the First Amendment rights of all of us, shouldn't be on the bench.
In other news this hour, a controversial decision out of California that could allow pot possession in prisons.
The 3rd District Court of Appeals has ruled that since voters in California legalized recreational possession of marijuana in 2016, that means prison inmates can also legally have small amounts of pot, though if they don't inhale. The court also overturned the convictions of 5 inmates who were found with marijuana in their prison cells. At the same time, the 3-judge court said that state law does prohibit using pot in prison, and corrections officials say it's against the rules. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
It's mosquito season and time to protect yourself. Here's Joy Piazza.
Summer doesn't officially begin for another week, but officials in Atlanta say peak mosquito season has already begun, and they're taking steps to battle the bugs. And with the mosquitoes comes the risk of West Nile virus. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, West Nile virus is the leading cause of mosquito-borne disease in the U.S. There's no medical way to prevent or treat West Nile. The CDC says the best defense is cover up and use insect repellent. I'm Joy Piazza, Fox News.
And the national average for a gallon of regular gasoline is $2.71 today. That's down from $2.86 on this day last month and $2.90 on this day last year. Find more news at onenewsnow.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and the One News Now mobile app. Thanks for listening.
Bishop Vincent Matthews.
Every one of my children have gone to college, that are in college on an academic scholarship. And we taught them in our home. So reevaluate. Wherever you bought your hair or got it done, one day it's going to be out of style. But your heritage is not just for what am I going to do today. It's for your children's 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 children.
The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference is coming June 20th through the 22nd. Learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
They did everything they could to destroy Trump. He's still president. He's improving in his poll numbers. The economy is growing. And on most major issues, the country is much closer to Trump than it is to radical Democrats.
As Biden tries to rekindle Democrats' fond memories of the Obama era, Bernie Sanders is searching for a spark. He's now trailing Biden and Elizabeth Warren in a Monmouth poll of Nevada Democrats. Far behind Biden and Bernie, there's Beto.
But look, whether it be with China, whether it be with other countries around the world, this president has been willing to use the economic power of the strongest economy in the history of the world, in using access to our market in the form of tariffs to put American jobs and American workers first.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hello. Hello, hello, hello. How are you? How's your day going? How's your coffee tasting? How's everything shaking out for you? I'm Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And we have a wonderful program all lined up for you. First, I just want to give you the sites. If this is first time tuning into the show, thanks for being here. And guess what? You can head over to urbanfamilytalk.com, afr.net, and onenewsnow.com and check out the content over there. Great stuff. Right now, just let me tell you, we're going to chat with the Andrew Klavan. Andrew Klavan, the screenwriter for the movie Gosnell. Also, he's an author. He's done so many fantastic things. He comes right out of Hollywood and New York. He's a culture warrior. He's pro-life. He's a man of faith, and he just has this amazing demeanor. My husband and I heard him speak here in St. Louis last week. He was at the Vitae Foundation dinner, and we were just blown away by his presentation. But there's, sometimes you're sitting and you're listening to someone speak, and they're famous. I mean, everyone in the room knows they're famous, but you get the distinct feeling that maybe they're not aware that they're famous, or perhaps that this is the one person who, out of all the people you've heard speak before, you might actually enjoy more than anything, just one of those marathon dinners where you meet up at about 7 and at 1 a.m. you're still talking and laughing and listening. I turned to my husband after he spoke and I said, I could see us just sitting with this guy, at our favorite dinner spot and just, eating and chatting and just listening to him talking about all kinds of topics. And my husband is usually pretty hard to please. He's not the easiest when it comes to meeting new people or hearing them speak and then thinking, oh, stellar. He's a very critical listener to what people have to say, and he doesn't like to have his time wasted. And so I just kind of said it spur of the moment, and he turned and he said, yeah, I could see that too, which is high praise coming from him. And so we were just, we enjoyed his speaking. And then afterwards I, ran over. I was trying to get there before the crush, and I did. I was like the third person, and I handed him my card, and I said how nice it was to meet him, and because I've listened to him before, I've seen his work before, but it was something really special to get to hear him speak. And he just looked me right in the eye, and he was like, it's really nice to meet you. And I just thought to myself, he really is just as real as he was during the speech. After the speech, like in person, it was really great. So I gave him my card, and I said, I would love to have you on the show. And then usually what happens, I'll tell you, I've done this hundreds of times before. I'm on my third pack. So I buy business cards in packs of 500 or 1,000. And on my third pack, so I've either bought 2,500 or 3,000 business cards. And I've given most of them away. And I'd say maybe 100 of those times that I've given them away, it's been to someone where I've heard them speak and I give them my card. And I don't want to ask them for their cell phone number because I know they're not going to give it to me. They haven't met me from Adam. But I always give them my card and say, I'd love to have you on the show. And I'd say maybe 20 times out of the 100, the person actually reaches back out. And this was quick. He emailed that evening and said, was great to meet you today. Someone from the Daily Wire will be reaching out to you. And then within 24 hours, she did. And we got this on the calendar. So super excited about having him on the show today. Really nice to meet someone who's willing to actually do an interview afterwards. It's hard to find people who are really willing to do that. So you're going to enjoy that. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the Democrats are now pointing to reparations. So while they continue their kabuki theater down in Washington, D.C. about impeaching the president, so some kind of wrongdoing that he must have done something wrong, because how else can we hate him this much? He just has to be bad. He has to be the worst thing ever. He has to be the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of worst things ever. Everest, totes, magnitude of 1 million gazillion billion. He's just that bad. And so we've got to get rid of him. I know it doesn't make any sense, but just stick with us. We're going to get rid of him, okay? You see, you'll see. You'll be happier once he's gone. You'll see. That's what's going on in their little brains. And they just can't stand it. And then he's in troll mode right now. He's literally saying stuff to send them over the edge. And instead of them saying, wait a minute, He's just saying that to tick us off. They're like, we're mad. We're super mad. He can't do that to us. We're the Democrats and we're Americans. Yeah, that's what's happening. Stephanopoulos with his little short self. He stood up next to the president at the desk looking like, he literally looks like he's maybe 10. And he says, but if a foreign government gives you some information about your political opponent, I mean, you wouldn't take that, would you? Now, what do you think Hillary Clinton couldn't get any information from foreign governments, so she made her own up. She went to a foreign national to make up bad information about Donald Trump. Stephanopoulos, who gave her campaign $72,000 and never disclosed that when he was interviewing her over and over and over again until he got called on the carpet. That's just an old little bit of history that matters. Stephanopoulos actually would never ask Hillary Clinton that question. And that's why I don't care what the president said about taking information from foreign governments today. And I want you to be crystal clear why I don't care. I want to make sure nobody who's listening, if you're in your car or you're at work or you got your headphones on and you're speed walking or running or on the elliptical, whatever you're doing right now, if you're wondering why I don't care that the president said he would take info or Oppo research from foreign governments, is because no one cares if a Democrat would do it. No one cares about the hundreds of just millions that they took, not hundreds of thousands of dollars. They took millions of dollars from foreign government for speaking engagements, namely the Ukraine and Russia. Hundreds of millions of dollars flowed into the Clinton Foundation for them to come around the world and speak to foreign governments. And nobody on the left or in the talking snake media said boo-boo the clown about it. Not only did they not say anything about it, they didn't care. And if you bring it up now, they'll say, well, that's just whataboutism. No, it's not. It's a valid question. If you think that Donald Trump shouldn't have meetings with people from foreign countries when they say they might have something to share, then do you care that the Clintons sat down with foreign governments? Do you care that Hillary Clinton sold 20% of our uranium stores to Russia? Yeah, she sold it through to a bunch of companies that are owned by the Russian government, but it's still basically Russia. Do you care about that? So whenever anybody, and I mean anybody, any Democrat, I don't care if you just voted Democrat once all the way up to Nancy Pelosi, anybody in between on that spectrum who's a Democrat, a hardcore Democrat, believes in it, lives it, you're in the inner city suffering right now, you're taking one for the team, you have one black friend, good for you. If you're one of those people and you're willing to talk about all of the foreign influence that has been exerted in the past by mechanism of Democrats, tell Vladimir after my election, I will have more flexibility. If you can talk about that, then we can explore the possibility of what the president said today about Oppo research from foreign governments, that might have been a mistake. We can have the discussion. I still am not ready to say it was a mistake because I still think he's playing with your mind. And if your mind is that small that he can actually hold it in his hand and play with it, that's a you problem, baby. That's a you problem. You have a tiny mind and it's triggered and you're all up in arms right now, but you have a one-sided tiny mind because your one-sided tiny mind can't get upset over things that Democrats do. It can only get triggered and just abused and misused and tossed around like, a feather in the wind. That's your mind worrying about Donald Trump. And while he's moving furniture around in the high-rise apartment he's built on the left-hand side of your mind, I'm over here. I know there's other things we can do. There's other things that I can get upset about or actually not get upset about. So here's a rundown of the stories for today. I mentioned the $1,000 you can win by using a flip phone only for 1 week, living like Warren Buffett. Joe Biden, this is poll data. And this is so funny to me. And I'm just going to cover this really quickly. More tech manufacturing companies exiting China. Nintendo and Sharp plan exits from China. Those tariffs are hitting them hard, babe. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we want. We want the president to put the pressure on them. Yes, we feel a little bit of it, but it's temporary for us. And I have some audio from Newt Gingrich where he explains that right there, that's everything. Our economy is the prize, not theirs. They got the workers, but we have the economy they want to do business with. So we should exert pressure on them. Mexico is freezing bank accounts in a widening migration clampdown. And this reparations thing, which we've covered before on the show, but it's worth noting that the Democrats, and that's the title of today's show, Election 2020, Democrats point to reparations instead of policy because they have no policy. And also their minds are tiny, like the size of ping pong balls, and Donald Trump's playing with them. He's got somebody in the office right now juggling the Democrats' minds for his entertainment. So this poll, it's a 2020 Democrat poll by The Economist and YouGov. They partnered together to do this thing. And they have Joe Biden at 26% and Sanders, who was up with Joe Biden at one point. And these numbers are fluid. This means nothing in 90 days. But right now, this is the lay of the land. Sanders is at 12% and Elizabeth Warren is at 16%. Now, see, this is the way I thought it might crack out. Now, obviously, we still have months to go. But Sanders, the more he talks, the more people, they catch a little bit of it. And they're like, something stinks. Oh, yeah, it's Bernie Sanders and his socialism. Yeah, the sound of gulags and murder and starving Americans and people eating their pets. That doesn't sound so hot. So when asked which candidate or candidates they were considering voting for in 2020, respondents ranked Warren at 45% in second place, just below Biden at 50%. And Sanders, the runner-up, was ranked in fourth place at 38% behind Senator Kamala Harris, who was at 39%. And this is a part of the questioning that they asked showed that Warren benefits from being viewed by overall respondents as a more acceptable nominee for the Democratic Party than Sanders. So people are waking up to the idea that as crazy is, Sanders only serves as a lightning rod to get policies that are socialist in nature into the mainstream American ethos. He gets Americans talking about these things and willing to accept them. But when it comes to being a standard bearer for the Democrats and their current party platform, he doesn't work because he keeps saying things that don't make sense about capitalism, which Americans are not willing to abandon. Even the most hardcore Democrats, when you say, well, that means everybody drinks the same coffee and it won't be Starbucks, they look at you funny. That means no more Airbnb, no more Uber, they look at you funny. That means you need to live in the same size house as every other person on your street, and it's a much smaller house than what you have. They might be willing to agree to that until they find out that illegal immigrants and lawful immigrants and everybody else will be there too. And they won't get to say, I want to move to a better neighborhood so I can have better schools for my kids. Once you start explaining it in real terms, all of a sudden that universal health care that Joe Biden is suddenly so in love with, it's not that cool anymore. They're like, oh, well, you're just making that up because you hate. No, not making that up, tiny-brained liberal. Your mind is actually ping-ponging around in some juggler's hand, and Donald Trump's giggling at you right now because you're triggered because you think he's going to sit down with foreign governments and try to impact the elections, when in reality, that didn't happen. The Mueller report, the sham that it is, actually showed that he's innocent of all of those things. And remember that Trump Tower meeting that everybody keeps bringing up, but nobody talks about the details? The Trump Tower meeting was about adoption and the Medvinsky Act. The Russians used to allow their kids to be adopted here into our country by the literally hundreds of thousands. And that all ended because they were upset because we named an act against corruption and murder of political opponents after someone that was killed from their country, Medvinsky. Yeah. So again, details are our friends, unless our minds are the size of ping pong balls, in which case, our minds are toys to be played with by the likes of Donald Trump. And I'm over here laughing just as hard as he is because he's just toying with you, liberals. He's playing with you. Okay, when we get back, we have Andrew Klavan. Stay there.
%80 of the time, an abortion-minded mother who views an ultrasound or sonogram of her baby will choose life. Here's the story of Candace.
The sonogram sealed the deal for me. My baby was like this tiny little spectrum of hope. And I saw his heart beating on the screen. And knowing that there's life growing inside, I mean, that sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to mom. Thank you to everybody that has given these gifts. You guys are giving more than money. You guys are giving love.
There are currently preborn centers which do not have an ultrasound machine. Would you sponsor a machine today? Dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Or go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Your love can save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. Some of the people who have greatly influenced my life are either aging or they've gone to be with the Lord. Sometimes I get a bit emotional when I think of people like Dr. Douglas B. McCorkle or Burton Cathy or Margaret Ponder, my parents, or others. I was not only influenced by what they shared with me, but I witnessed their godly lives even through adversity and hard times. Their memory is dear to me, but I've also known those whose lives were riddled with wickedness. Their memory brings sadness to my soul. How we live today is how people will remember us. The preoccupation with Christ's likeness must be our lifelong pursuit. If that's what is most important to us, then our pursuit of God is what we must be known by. In Proverbs chapter 10, verse 7, Solomon reminds us of this. The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. What a stark contrast. In other words, Solomon says, the very thought of the righteous puts joy in the heart and a smile on the face. It's hard for me to be sad for too long when I think about my mother and my father who are with the Lord. Yes, I miss them, but they're rejoicing with him, and I know the legacy of their lives. The memories are sweet. It puts a smile on my face and joy in my heart. On the other hand, Solomon says the name of the wicked will rot. Those who don't have Christ as Lord and those who live lives riddled with sin have no lasting legacy. It is a legacy of pain and heartache. Well, here's what I want you to remember and do today. Invest in righteousness. Your life is your legacy. Righteousness will pay enormous dividends of hope and blessings for future generations.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hi, friends. I'm back. Okay, so daughter, the youngest, just strolled by and overheard me saying that the Democrats' minds were like ping pong balls being batted around by Donald Trump, and she got a good laugh out of that. And then she flashed me the OK sign, which we then giggled about, being white supremacy with both of us being permanently tanned and all. Yeah, that's what happened over the break. All right. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome, he's just so fantastic, dailywire.com to find out more about his radio program and other things that he's doing. Andrew Klavan. He spoke to us last week at the Vitae dinner here in St. Louis, and it was our pleasure to hear him and kind of, just think to ourselves, what would happen if we were all at dinner together and we were just laughing and talking late into the night? And we knew that that would be awesome. It hasn't happened yet, but we can always dream. Andrew, thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure, Stacy. It's good to talk to you.
So first off, let's talk about the screenplay. You wrote the screenplay for the movie Gosnell, which I've seen. I saw it in the theater with a friend. It was not the easiest thing to watch, but it was such a great representation of what actually happened. Because oftentimes when a true story, true to life story goes to the screen, it doesn't comport over. It doesn't move over well. It did in this case. How did you do it? How did you, it had to have been like a Herculean effort to take that real story to the screen.
Yeah, we started from the point of view, we wanted to make sure that this was a watchable, even entertaining film. Obviously, a film that's about an abortionist serial killer is pretty grim. But we wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be gory. It wasn't going to be something you had to turn away from. It was going to be a crime story. I'm a crime writer. I'm a suspense writer, and I wanted it to be in that tradition. And I think that that's what we all achieved. Having said that, I mean, it was a hard story to write, and I'm sure it is a hard story to watch if you're not familiar with it. I was haunted the entire time I was writing it. I posted a cartoon. Michael Ramirez, the Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist, sent me a political cartoon of the babies that Gosnell killed as Holocaust victims, with the caption "Never Again." And I hung that up over my computer as I was writing and looked at it all the time because I felt this tremendous burden to speak for these children who hadn't been allowed to speak for themselves. And so that was basically what was in my mind as I was going forward, and it really did weigh on me the entire time, and I hope it did at least a little bit of that, because to me that's the problem with abortion is that women can go on TV and talk about the troubles they had and the reasons they had an abortion, and those are sad stories and true stories and real stories. But the baby can never speak. The baby can't say what a life he or she would have had, what they would have done, what they would have felt, all the beauty and joy and sorrow of a life just is silenced in a moment. So I was trying to give a little bit of a voice to all those victims.
So you did so well because so I went with a friend who she's very politically astute, but she's also, again, this is a subject matter where not a lot of us just sit around talking about abortion in the stark way that this story presents it. This is the side of abortion that was never supposed to happen, right, Andrew? We were told safe, legal, and rare. Gosnell never should have been able to happen in America because liberals told us if we passed Roe v. Wade, if we made abortion legal and lawful in every state and standardized it and funded Planned Parenthood, that Gosnell could never happen. But the story shows us that it's not only that it's happened, but that it's easy for it to happen in America.
Well, there are two incredibly horrific things about this story that prove what you're saying. One is Gosnell was never caught for decades, he went on killing children, and he wasn't caught because officials did not want to bring forth a story into the news that would challenge the safe, legal, rare idea, that would challenge the idea that abortion is some kind of health care that women get instead of what it is, which is an act of killing. So not only did the officials ignore all the complaints against him, truly a paper tower of complaints, but once he was put on trial, the most prolific serial killer in American history, zero reporters showed up at the trial to cover it. So that is one horrific fact of just how the absolute insistence in not seeing what abortion is and making sure that the public doesn't see it, let this guy operate. And of course, the other thing that's so horrible is today in Illinois or New York with their new abortion laws, I'm not even sure Gosnell would be a criminal. I'm not sure the things he did would be prosecutable because their abortion laws now allow children to be exterminated even up to the moment of birth. The idea that a child a moment before being born is not a child is simply absurd. And every time somebody says, that's infanticide, the press reports it as somebody falsely claiming that it's infanticide. But infanticide is exactly what it is. So it really is true that when conservatives say there's a slippery slope and leftists continually say, oh, no, you're just being paranoid, conservatives are almost always right. And in this case, they've been right in the worst possible way.
So you've written over 40 books. I'm looking at your biography here. And so you're a prolific writer. You were the perfect person to bring a story that was in the news to the screen. And you've done that. But you also shared with us it was like an amazing transformation that happened over years where you went from being someone who was kind of, just reluctantly pro-choice, but pro-choice, to being someone who is, you're absolutely pro-life and you're eloquent about it. You can convince other people that they're in the wrong position if they listen. How can you tell the listeners how that happened?
Well, I'm a natural libertarian. I mean, I'm an artist. Artists are all a little quirky, and we need to be given room to be free, and we want other people to be free. So I naturally want to leave people alone and protect their liberty and protect their actions. So I was pro-abortion on those grounds. I just thought this is something that women have to be able to choose. They have to be able to decide for themselves. But after my daughter was born, I had a very powerful the only mystical experience of my life when my daughter was born, when I felt this incredibly intense love that took me out of my body and into my wife and my daughter and into this great sea of love that I saw beyond our physical lives. And it really disturbed me. It disturbed me for years because I hadn't, at that point, had no religion. I hadn't found God yet. And I couldn't make sense of what I'd seen. But it must have disturbed me in ways that I didn't think about because very soon after that, I was talking to a good friend of mine, a guy I really respect and have a lot of affection for, and he's a devout Catholic. And I brought up the subject as we were sitting around having a couple of beers together. I brought up the subject of abortion, knowing that I was starting an argument with him. And he and I argued this through the night, well into the early hours of the morning. And I think I must have incited this argument on purpose because I wanted to hear myself justify myself in my opinions after seeing what I had seen at my daughter's birth. And we argued it and argued it. And I went to bed that morning. It's like 2, 3 in the morning. And I remember thinking to myself, I lost that argument. And I'm a good arguer, Stacy. I don't lose a lot of arguments. And it really haunted me. And it took a long time for me. I'm very dedicated to being logical and making sense and being true to the things that I think are true morally and realistically. And so over the years, I just had to come to terms with the fact that I lost this argument, that I had no answer to the things that he had said, which were not religious arguments. They were perfectly practical, physical arguments about what abortion was. And ultimately, I very reluctantly changed my mind. I thought, the problem I have here is that I'm listening to the women, and some of these women have truly touching, even tragic stories, but I'm not listening to the voices of these children. I'm not listening to the voices of these children because they're being silenced before they can speak. And so once I came to terms with that, I very reluctantly changed my mind. And then, of course, as I allowed myself to learn more about what abortion is, what it really does, I became a lot more passionate about it and realized, I had just made in youth a terrible mistake.
So that is one of those stories where as you tell it, I can see the evolution happening. And giving birth, I've done it 3 times. It's an amazing experience, but it's also amazing for the husband. The father is there, and they go through something too, and that's not often portrayed in movies or discussed or talked about in the same way that men's voices are silenced by abortion, because men are not allowed to have an opinion. They're not allowed to say, you can't abort my child. They're not even allowed to mourn the loss of a baby that's been aborted against their will. Often there's the silencing of men. It's compounded by the fact that their silence makes it impossible to discuss the impact that abortion has on men.
Well, I think, I become immediately suspicious when being told that someone doesn't have the right to voice an opinion on any subject. If I'm told I can't have an opinion because I'm white, if I'm told I can't have an opinion because I'm male, if I'm told I can't have an opinion because I'm anything, I just think, you don't have an argument. You can't meet my arguments, and that's why you're trying to silence me. And this is an incredibly effective technique. When I was researching Gosnell, I talked to the prosecutor in the case, and she said that when they were doing jury selection, they would ask the men about their opinions on abortion, and man after man refused to express an opinion on abortion, saying, no, that's just something a woman must decide, as if the slaughter of millions of children of both genders is not something that men have a right to speak about. That's absurd. Of course it's absurd. Whenever I hear somebody, it's amazing how often, if you watch TV, it is amazing how often we're being told that someone does not have a right to express opinion. Usually it's somebody on the right who is not being allowed to speak because the leftists can't make an argument. I'm always suspicious of that.
Well, you said you're suspicious when you're not allowed to have an opinion because you're white. And today's show, our overarching theme, besides the Blues winning the Stanley Cup and you coming on, is that the Democrats for 2020, they're actually resurrecting the issue of reparations because racism as a tool hasn't worked to dampen support for Donald Trump. People who think he's a racist always thought he was a racist. They disregard any true facts about that. So they can't get any more market share on calling him a racist. So they want to bring up reparations to make anyone who opposes reparations into a racist. Now, I happen to be permanently tan, so I get to have a valid opinion on it, except that I'm a conservative, which wipes out my opinion. Where are you on this thing?
Yes. That is the funny thing. If you're a conservative, you have your race card revoked and you have your female card revoked because obviously they're not really talking about people of color. They're not really talking about women. They're always talking about leftists, and they're the only people who get the protection. And, the thing about Donald Trump that is funny, I mean, he was a successful real estate developer in New York, which is very difficult to do. He was a successful television star, very difficult. He was a successful presidential candidate, probably more difficult than anything. But somehow he's a total failure as a racist. Somehow, in spite of being, this virulent racist that we keep seeing on TV, he keeps making people's lives better regardless of their color. And I think that story is kind of falling apart. The other thing that's falling apart for Democrats is that their unfettered immigration policy has really hurt minorities in this country. And it makes us all think that really they have abandoned homegrown minorities in favor of bringing in these new voters by the tens and hundreds of thousands hoping that will secure them in the future. And I just think that should be, if anybody's paying attention, that should be very alienating to typical, Democrat voters.
It should be. And also insulting that they keep bringing up things like, like reparations and trying to resurrect the disagreements with Black community and the police departments of this country. They basically are saying to Black people, we know the only way we can motivate you is through your emotions. And even if what we're saying isn't true, if it impacts you emotionally, that's where we're going. That is so insulting that they don't ever present any intellectual arguments to Black Americans or Hispanic Americans in order to motivate them to vote for the Democrats.
I personally, I was just speaking as a man, Stacy. I don't understand how any Black man, because there's a lot more in common between other men and men than there is between men and women of all different races.
That's
I
true.
think, and I don't understand if anybody of any party, any politician of any party, told me that I was so helpless that I couldn't move forward in my life without him doing all this stuff for me because I was just so weak and so helpless, I would turn my back on that guy and never look at him again. I would never vote for somebody who treated me like that. Somebody asked me recently, what have Republicans done for Black people? And I said, why should they do anything for anybody? They should do things for everybody. They shouldn't be doing things for one group or another. They should be doing things for America. We're all in this together. We're all Americans. Why should they be picking out people according to race and saying, I'm going to do something special for this person? They're, in my opinion, they're incredibly racist. I mean, it's an incredibly racist way to treat people, that they are somehow not able to achieve the things that they want to achieve. And everybody else is except for them. I do not understand. Speaking as a man, I do not understand how men listen to that and say, yeah, I want to vote for that. I want to vote for my helplessness and weakness and stupidity.
Well, and it's the same for us as women, that Black women are the main targets and users of abortion and other things that the Democrats peddle as being very helpful. But when you look in the community, you see the out-of-wedlock birth rate is, astronomical for Black women. And even though Black women get more college degrees than Black men do, the Black incarceration rate, due to the lack of fatherhood in the Black community, it means that there's something wrong culturally. And what happens when you talk about that is Democrats start screaming about racism. They'll jump up and down. They'll, throw glitter on you, whatever they have to do to get you to stop saying those things so they can go back to their favorite topic, which is always racism. And I know there are people who experience racism. I've experienced it. It's not like it's gone away. But to say that that's the only thing that matters to whether or not I'm successful, that is ultimately really insulting to me, because it discounts every other thing that I've been able to do or accomplish. Any natural gifts, anything, it just takes it all out of play. And my interest in all of these things is just for people to have the truth and then make their own choice. And I think that's what you do in spades. You bring the truth to the market and then let people decide. And we're out of time, but I'm hoping that you'll join us again, especially new projects as they come out. I just was so glad that we were able to connect up and make this interview happen. Andrew Klavan, prolific author, writer of the screenplay for the movie Gosnell, and so many other things, dailywire.com. Sir, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks so much, Stacy.
All right, talk to you again soon. That was Andrew Klavan. You guys, bucket list, check mark. Okay, when we get back, you can be our guest. You can call in at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Stacy Washington. I'll be right back.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
If there was a problem in our marriage, I felt Tony was a little too laid back. I would treat the problem more aggressively. I knew, though, that it wasn't that Tony didn't care. He's just different.
Over the course of our marriage, we've come to realize that our differences lead to a balance that is good, not bad. I'll usually reassure Lauren that everything's going to be okay, while she will push me a bit, saying, "We've got to act." Such times remind us that God has brought us together, not despite of our differences, but because of them.
Above all else, we both love the Lord and want to serve Him, even in our differences.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Just as David's mighty man Benaiah chased down a lion into a pit on a snowy day, Lion Chasers champions uncommon men and women of faith who are unafraid to stand up and speak truth to power in these dark and evil days. Never before has there been such a need for people of faith to draw a line in the sand with the sword of truth. Lion Chasers, the intersection of faith and public policy with Lonnie Poindexter. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk.
This is Poll Paris with Fox News Director of Polling, Dana Blanton.
Voters want federal action on guns. A wide majority in our Fox News poll, 71%, say gun violence is a major problem the government should address. And that was before the most recent mass shooting in Virginia Beach, which killed 12. We asked these questions mid-May. There's less agreement on a solution to gun violence. Just under half, 47%, say stricter gun control laws would make the country safer. But 19% think the opposite, that tougher laws would make things less safe. 32% say new laws wouldn't make a difference either way. Most Democrats think tighter laws would improve safety. Republicans and independents are most likely to say laws wouldn't make a difference. Gun ownership is common in the U.S. 41% say someone in their household owns a gun. These gun owners are less likely to say stricter gun laws would make us safer. However, a majority, 64%, agree gun violence is a major problem that government should tackle. I'm Dana Blanton, and that's your Poll Paris.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The attacks come amidst increasing tensions between the U.S. and Iran. Today, Japan's prime minister is in Tehran to try to calm down the escalating rhetoric. Both tankers were carrying Japanese petroleum products when they were attacked. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and National Security Advisor John Bolton are here at the Pentagon this morning for a pre-scheduled meeting with the acting defense secretary and chairman of the Joint Chiefs in the secured planning room known as the Tank. The two oil tankers were damaged outside the all-important Strait of Hormuz in the Gulf of Oman. Both underway outside in the strait, near the strait, when the explosion occurred. One was left ablaze and 44 sailors had to be rescued at sea. The tankers had just left ports in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and they were en route to Asia. The distress calls came 8 minutes apart, according to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet. Quote, "We are aware of the reported attack on shipping vessels in the Gulf of Oman. U.S. naval forces in the region received 2 separate distress calls at 6:12 a.m. local Bahrain time and a second one at 7 a.m. U.S. Navy ships in the area are rendering assistance. Officials say USS Bainbridge, a guided missile destroyer, part of the Lincoln Strike Group, is in the vicinity and rescued 21 of those sailors. The USS Abraham Lincoln, the aircraft carrier sent to the region last month, had just completed a port visit to Oman and had just gotten underway today when the incident occurred. The head of American forces in the region, General Frank McKenzie, was recently in the Middle East, warning of an unspecified imminent threat from Iran and its proxies. Iranian state media claims to have rescued sailors from at least one of the ships, and some of those sailors were taken to a port in Iran. And this comes just a month after 4 different oil tankers were attacked by mines, which the Pentagon blamed on Iran.
Wow. So this is an escalation in the kind of, there's a bit of a non-war little thing going on where it's tit for tat, mostly Iranian influences acting out against the leadership of the United States since we've canceled the Iran nuclear deal. And I'm glad that we had ships in the area that could respond, but it's just, you know, it is what it is. Thank God for our U.S. Navy and their quick ability to be able to move in on these situations and rescue these guys from a very, very dangerous, like, you know, explosions on an oil tanker, fire and oil. That's a horrible thing to have happen. So welcome back to the show. Thanks for being here today. The call lines are open at 963-2037, 866-963-2037. We are going to be, well, let's dig into it now. So I actually thought to myself, Democrats can't shock me. Whenever I say that, it's almost like it's a dare. Like someone says, hold my beer, and then the next thing you know, that's what they're doing. The discussion here was by this Democrat, Representative Torres, and she takes to the floor of the House, and you have to watch the video because everyone around her, so you know how it is when they're on the floor of the House, they step up to a podium and they get acknowledged, and then they have a certain number of minutes to speak. And so the camera, usually C-SPAN, but often other news media outlets will be there as well. The camera doesn't just do a tight shot on them like when you're on television and you're doing a remote hit or a live hit on someplace, Fox, CNN, whatever. They sit you in a chair and they have a background behind you, but they frame you up so that it's just your shoulders and, a little bit further down below your round neck or your little, jacket, whatever, and your head. So, that's why we call them talking heads. Well, when they're on the floor of the House, you often get the view of the person speaking and then a group of people around them. Whoever's sitting behind them is on the screen. So Representative Torres is railing against the pro-life legislation that is being brought about by Republican legislatures across the country. And she starts off by talking about pro-life men. Now, I think it was really important, like you can save that clip off at YouTube where we're live streaming. Andrew Klavan expressed some really eloquent, well-placed truths just then about how men are disenfranchised by abortion, not just because male babies are aborted, but because men don't really have a say. The only people who are men who have a say with abortions are either people who agree with it, if you agree with abortion, and the men who are sexual predators who are protected by Planned Parenthood. That's it. Everybody else has to shut up and let women have a choice. So, Torres starts talking about the pro-life men. Now, before you hear this audio, I just want to call to your remembrance. 2 or 3 weeks ago, Alyssa Milano said that liberal women should stop being intimate with their quote-unquote partners. Y'all know I'm not down with that terminology, but that's what she said. Because they need to make it clear to them that they're on the wrong side. Like to bring their men to the right position on abortion, they shouldn't be intimate with them. Which I found hilarious, to be quite honest with you. Because if you're not intimate with someone that you're not married with, then you don't need to have an abortion. Okay, too much common sense there. I'll stop. So listen to Torres and what she says about the Republican men who are pro-life and their actions. It's number 3.
Mr. Speaker, it is tiring to hear from so many sex-starved males on this floor talk about a woman's right to choose. Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does a gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I would just like to ask my friend if she'd like to change her last statement.
Mr. Speaker, if it pleases my colleague on the other side, I will withdraw my statement about sex-starved males on the floor.
So then she goes back a little bit further. Then they go through some parliamentary procedure where he had put in an objection to what she said. She didn't want to officially withdraw, but then she was told by someone sitting next to her. The woman sitting next to her was flipping through what looked like a binder with pieces of paper in it that are inside of plastic sleeves. So basically the rule book, the Robert's Rule of Order short book for what they're doing there. And she's flipping through and telling her what to say. When she said it, the women standing behind her kind of, you know how you jerk your head to look at somebody like, what did she just say? They were looking at each other like, oh, no, she didn't just say that the Republican men are sex starved and that's why they're pro-life. And you could hear the men in the room erupt. They're like, no, you can't say that. And then a few people rushed down to the podium. And it was the man who was speaking who voiced the objection. And then there was a woman behind him and she was kind of bouncing up and down a little bit. And I could tell she was ready to let things go. She was ready to just, you know what? You want to play these games? I got some stupid prizes for you. Let's do it. She looked ticked. So if it wasn't him objecting, it would have been a host of other people who were in the room who felt like that was absolutely uncalled for. Now, those kinds of characterizations are the purview of leftists. Personal attacks. And yes, I just said liberals had the mind of ping pong balls. Their minds were as tiny as ping pong balls. Yeah, I said it. I'm not taking that personal attack back. In context, that made perfect sense. Donald Trump's playing with their mind. If you don't understand metaphors, that's a you problem. This is on a different scale, because what she's doing is she's reducing men to a sex act. That's what she's doing. She's reducing men to that, to diminish their ability to object to a policy that she is in favor of. And that's what we have to do every single time with these people. You have to boil it down. What is she really trying to say? She wants to nullify the opinions of men on the right who are pro-life. That would leave the women. And then she could eliminate the women by saying, well, pro-life women are white and therefore they're racist because they don't want black women to be able to have abortions because the black women have all the criminals. Yes. You see what they're doing there? And thank God the people in the House were not having it. They were not going to allow her to say these kinds of things in their presence and let her get away with it. All right, let's go to the phones. If you want to join us, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Terry in Illinois, thanks for joining the show today.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call.
Hello.
Well, all this abortion talk and, well, actually killing baby talk, let's call it for what it is. And I've often wondered, I'm one of those guys back in the 70s, well, that was in a relationship with his girlfriend, and then we were intimate, and then, of course, she was pregnant, and then she decided she was going to have this abortion. Well, I didn't want the abortion, but she did. And I even struck up a deal. I said, look, that's a baby. You don't have to kill that baby. When two people are intimate and the woman gets pregnant, they're going to have a baby. They're either going to have a live one or they're going to have a dead one, but they're going to have a baby. I wanted a live one. And I told her, I said, look, you do the 9 months of work. I'll do the 18 years of work. You don't have to kill this child. I want this child. Now, how many other men, we're coming up on Father's Day. How many other men are out there like that, like me, that sit around thinking, well, I could have had one more child if it wasn't all left up to one half of the two people that are responsible for creating that. Well, God is in there too, but I'm just saying, there's two people. It takes two people. It takes a man and a woman to make that baby. Why don't they have a say in this? And they never have.
It's true. Now, what you're going through, you're right. There are millions of men out there who suffer silently for reproductive loss because they're not given a voice. They're not allowed to even express sorrow for what's happened. And this is all because we've basically said abortion is the law of the land and there can be no restrictions. It seems like she would have said, okay, if you want to take the baby on, I will give the baby to you. Or I'll give the baby a life. But that's not the thought process that's indoctrinated into women and girls nowadays. They're told by Planned Parenthood what they're to think and feel, which is it's not a baby, it's a clump of cells, and you need to get rid of it so you can feel better about it. And then, of course, that's when all the pain starts because you don't feel better afterwards, and it doesn't end the situation. The point that you made about having a baby, whether the baby is alive or dead, is one that we have to remember. And I want to point on the live stream, someone just typed in, the first person to recognize God was an infant. Look that up in the Bible. That is some truth that just, let it ring out, y'all. Let it ring out. Reed, thank you so much for calling the show today.
Hi, Stacy. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. First, shout out to my fellow Navy vets out there.
Thank you for your service.
Boys out there rescuing them people.
Yeah.
Huh?
I said thank you for your service. That's awesome.
Anyway, you too. You too. My comment, and I told the guy I kind of came in late in the show, so I wasn't really sure what you were covering today, but I'm just so sick to my heart from all of the lying that we keep hearing in our representatives up there in Washington in that big cesspool. It's just one hour after another on the TV, on the radio, and the newspapers, just lies after lies after lies. Mm-hmm. And then it followed up with more lies from the people that are supposed to be reporting the truth. I'm from the days of Walter Cronkite, and where you relied on the news to let you know what was really going on in the world. Mm-hmm. And you can't tell truth from lies anymore with these people because it's all the same. It's all garbage.
All day, every day. You're so right, Reed. So one of the things that has become evident to me is this is why the Bible talks about us knowing the truth. Because if we are truly rooted and grounded in the scripture and we have really, really allowed the Lord to sharpen our minds and we've asked for wisdom, then when we hear lies, we immediately know, okay, something about that does not pass the smell test. Let me go find out what the truth is. But when we become immune to the truth and we begin to accept lies and prefer them because they tickle our hearts, they tickle our fancy, they make us feel good about holding a certain position, then other lies come to us and they just go right in. We just not only accept them, but we swallow them whole cloth and they become a part of what our thinking process is. And that's what we're seeing right now, where people, it's past deception. It's willful ignorance that we're seeing when people are sitting up and consuming hours upon hours upon hours of CNN and MSNBC and never ever questioning how the stuff they're seeing there, it doesn't even match up with the real life they're living. If you are black and you watch CNN all the time and you hear them tell you all the time, you can't live without Democrats and that America's a racist country, but you work for white people, you live in a white neighborhood, your kids go to a school that's majority white, how are you reconciling that? Every person you know is a racist and nothing's happening to you. Nothing bad's happening to you. Every day you're just basically self-determining and living your own way, but everybody's a racist? Every white person. I mean, just how do you make that match what you're living? It doesn't match. I tell you, I see white people every day. And I have never once in my years on this earth, decades on this earth, I've never, ever not been black. And so out of the 2 or 3 times I've experienced racism, where I was like, okay, that's actual racism, I've had millions of other interactions that were not only not racist, but where people were going out of their way to be kind or decent or nice or working with each other or whatever. So one can be true and one must be the lie, and that's it. Okay. That's the first hour of the show. It just evaporated. I have so much more. If you're leaving us now, God bless from the heartland. If you're sticking around, onenewsnow.com. News and information up next, and then I'll be back.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk is that alternative radio network because we choose to infuse Jesus in everything we do.
We count it a blessing to be able to speak with integrity and to speak honestly on the issues.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for joining us, partnering with us, being a part of Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk, so that we can stand for the gospel.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. A federal watchdog says President Trump's advisor Kellyanne Conway has broken the law and should be removed from her position. John Decker has more from the White House.
The Office of Special Counsel has recommended the removal of White House Counselor Kellyanne Conway from federal office for violating the Hatch Act, which bars federal employees from engaging in political activity in the course of their work. The report found that Conway violated the Hatch Act on numerous occasions by disparaging Democratic presidential candidates while speaking in her official capacity during television interviews and on social media. The White House in a statement said that the special counsel's actions against Conway are deeply flawed and violate her constitutional rights to free speech and due process. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
The State Department believes it has a culprit on that attack on U.S. ships sailing the Strait of Hormuz. Lucas Tomlinson has that story from the Pentagon.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo blamed Iran for carrying out the brazen attacks on 2 oil tankers outside the Strait of Hormuz.
This assessment is based on intelligence, the weapons used, the level of expertise needed to execute the operation.
U.S. Central Command says an American warship found an unexploded mine attached to one of the tankers, which caught fire after leaving the United Arab Emirates. 21 sailors rescued from one tanker are now on board USS Bainbridge after the abandoned ship. At the Pentagon, Lucas Tomlinson, Fox News.
Last November, a Chinese scientist claimed to use a gene-modifying technology known as CRISPR to make the first genetically edited babies. The stated purpose was to make the twin girls resistant to HIV infection, something the Chinese scientist claims many adults and children suffer from in his homeland. This month, a study published in Nature found that babies whose genes have been edited by CRISPR may be at a higher risk of early death. Twyla Brace of Citizens Council for Health Freedom says nobody knows when you start to mess with the DNA what's going to happen.
I don't believe that scientist, if he had thought about giving those 2 girls or anybody else a shorter lifespan, that he would have done it, but he probably wasn't thinking about that. He was just thinking about how he wanted to experiment with these girls and give them protection against HIV.
Meanwhile, the Chinese scientist isn't the end of it.
A Russian biologist plans more CRISPR-edited babies.
Brace thinks it would be good for the media to spend more time talking about gene editing.
What we do know about genetics is that it passes from family to family to family, and we have no idea what we're passing. And we have no idea how one person's regular genes and another person's edited genes, what will that make when they come together in a child? Nobody knows.
Public and private insurance companies must cover abortion in Maine. That's according to a new bill signed into law by Governor Janet Mills. The new law will take effect in 90 days and requires all insurance companies that cover prenatal care to include coverage of abortion. The proposal faced pushback from Republicans and a handful of Democrats who argued against taxpayer-funded abortions. A major meat and poultry company is about to introduce a substitute for chicken nuggets under the brand Raised and Rooted. Jenny Casolo reports.
Tyson is about to get into the plant-based food trend. Starting this summer, you'll be able to buy Tyson nuggets made from peas, flaxseed, bamboo fiber, and other plants. It's Tyson's first meat alternative products. Executives believe the business could grow to $1 billion in sales a year. Tyson also plans to sell burgers and sausages that blend beef and chicken with pea protein, quinoa, and barley to satisfy customers who are flexitarian or partially vegetarian. Tyson has also invested in Myco technology, which makes mushroom-based proteins.
That is the news for this hour. Find more food for thought at onenewsnow.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and the One News Now mobile app for Apple and Android devices. I'm Chris Woodward. Thank you for listening.
There's a particular reason why there is a Back to God radio show. It was about 4 years ago, God called me out of the pulpit and said, Dexter, I need you to go tell my people it's time for them to get back to God, back to my morals, back to my values. This is the thing that you're supposed to do simply because you belong to the Most High God. It's the least that you can do for a God that loves you the way that he does.
Time to get back to God. Weekday afternoons at 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
They did everything they could to destroy Trump. He's still president. He's improving in his poll numbers. The economy is growing. And on most major issues, the country is much closer to Trump than it is to radical Democrats.
As Biden tries to rekindle Democrats' fond memories of the Obama era, Bernie Sanders is searching for a spark. He's now trailing Biden and Elizabeth Warren in a Monmouth poll of Nevada Democrats. Far behind Biden and Bernie, there's Beto.
But look, whether it be with China, whether it be with other countries around the world, this president has been willing to use the economic power of the strongest economy in the history of the world, in using access to our market in the form of tariffs to put American jobs and American workers first.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey. Welcome back. Okay, we're going to go straight to the phones. And then, obviously, super excited to speak to Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft. He's a friend. He's someone that first of all, I was so excited to see him run. So excited to see him win. So excited to see him working down in Jeff City on behalf of us Missourians. We need people like Jay Ashcroft, and he has a family legacy of just working on behalf of the American people. His father was the Attorney General of the United States, and so it's just going to be so fun to talk to him. And also, we are going to chat about, in addition to updates on our continuing saga with the heartbeat bill here in the state of Missouri, and the referendum petition that has been launched by an individual who wants to basically see the repeal of HB 126. We're going to talk about the Blues winning the Stanley Cup last night. That happened, y'all. That happened. And so you might be thinking, Stacy, are you a hockey fan? Well, okay, let's just be real here. I'm sometimey. I'm sometimey with the Cards. I totally have Cards gear. I have Blues gear, but I'm sometimey with them because when they're winning, I'm all about it and I have all my gear. And when they're not winning, I care for them, but I don't really express anything. So that's just who I am, y'all. I'm sorry. DJ in Arkansas. Hey, thanks for holding over on the break, and thanks for calling the show.
You're very welcome. It was well worth the wait. You are outstanding.
Oh, thank you.
And I can't compliment you enough on how eloquent you are. The intelligence is just screaming through the radio, and it's so comforting, being that I spend a lot of time in a truck, so I'm constantly searching through channels looking for. I don't know if I can mention other hosts on your program or not.
Yeah, I don't care.
Well, I mean, I'm a huge Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, Alan West, whenever I can catch him, Herman Cain.
The standards, yeah.
Right in, and I just wish I had a tablet or something that has different stations that I can tune to instead of just having to search through them all. Anyway, you mentioned about I'm trying to guard my language. You mentioned how liberals have the mind of ping pong balls, and what I see is that the men behave as though they're castrated, and the women are totally the opposite.
They're like
they
men.
Seem to be too much.
You're right.
In such a forceful way. And Rush has a good term for that, but I don't want to be crossing over to different what his terminology, which I think is exactly spot on. He calls them feminazis, and that's exactly how they behave. And I mentioned to this wonderful man who answered the phone, it just popped into my mind when I was explaining what I wanted to talk about, which I'm basically done. I'm furious that Mitt Romney can be a doormat during the debates when he was running for president. I don't even want to mention the name of the man he was running against, but he practically lays down and is a doormat for him, but he's going after Donald Trump for basically toying with the media. He's like the cat, the little dot on the wall with the cat.
Yeah. It just keeps running. Exactly. So
you're right on that theme, and you are right on. And there's so many other things I would love to say, but just God bless you. God bless this wonderful country, and God bless Donald Trump and Michael Pence. And I hope
Thank you. Thank you so much, DJ. So I have to say, first of all, it's awesome. I love the fact that you keep yourself entertained while you're driving and moving products across the country for us Americans to buy and to, help feed the nation, that you're tuned into all good conservative radio. And I feel like on the one hand, we are so blessed. Obviously, that's the overarching. It's not one hand. It's the overarching thing is that we're so blessed and we get to live here and we get to fight about these things. But on the other hand, it is an interesting dichotomy the way the dynamic is for liberal women. They're angry. They're in charge. They're running everything. And then for the rest of us, for on the conservative side, we're a little less strident. We're laid back. We're running stuff, us women, but we're not doing it in spite of men or to put men down. We're just basically like, hey, I got my lane. I'm over here. I'm doing this, and I'm doing it in partnership with the men in my life. My son and our son, my husband. Even my dad. My father and my mom. They have their life, but I'm a part of it, and so it's never to put any man down that I'm doing what I'm doing or to subvert any man. It's more like I just have this thing that I get to do. And I do so with the, with the approval of my husband. And I don't mean that I had to say, may I? It's more like he was saying, yes, that's what you're supposed to be doing. I support that. And I was like, oh, good, because it feels good to know that you think this is a good idea too. And what does this look like? And there have been many times where I've said, I have this opportunity and I wonder, what do you think about this? And he will give me his genuine opinion. And it comes from a place of wanting the best for me. And it just feels so different than what I see and observe with liberal women who seem to always be at odds with men and to view them as the enemy. And even to say horrible things about their own sons. I'm afraid my son's going to grow up to be a rapist. Why? Why would any mom be afraid their son was going to grow up to be a rapist instead of owning that your mothering of your son plays a role in that? Ultimately, it's personal responsibility, but you're raising him. There's no fear. I know I'm not raising any rapists over here. How about that? Where's his father? Best way to make sure you don't raise a rapist? His father should be there teaching him how men protect and serve women. It's just like, it's not going to happen. And then of course the ultimate line of defense, you pray over that young man from the moment he's coming, and every day thereafter, you're just praying that God would give him wisdom and self-control and strength and peace, and that he would be a protector, a provider, and someone who serves women. And I don't mean serves like he's bringing the dinner or cooking it. No, that is not what I mean. And is that sexist for me to say that that's not his role? Of course, there are men out there who love to cook. There are chefs, everything. But I'm talking about that traditional home model where a man is coming home from the workplace and he smells something fantastic going on, and that he knows that's his dinner. An act of love from his wife that he's going to have some dinner going on when he gets home from the workplace. That's what I'm talking about. If he works from home, maybe you're going to take him a nice hot lunch in there to where he's working from home. Let him have a little something. It's just let's make that happen, right? And so that's the difference I see between, and the point that DJ makes is it's so brilliant because there's not a lot of happiness there. And I'm saying that out of not to gloat or to, point fingers, but to say that it doesn't look happy. It doesn't look fun. It doesn't look satisfying to be in a relationship with someone where you're constantly at war with them, and your overarching political ideology is one that says that your husband is a part of a patriarchy and he's your enemy. And if he's not a part of the patriarchy and is your enemy, then he is someone to be pitied because he's a victim. Who wants to be married to a victim? I'd rather be married to a victor, someone who I know is leading the household and leading the charge and getting it done. Someone who I know he's a prayer warrior. He's also the leader of the household, meaning he's responsible, knowing that you're taken care of. That's what women are looking for. And women who aren't looking for that, they're railing against it because deep down they do want it. but they're too ashamed to say anything because feminists told them they couldn't. You're not allowed to want a man to take care of you. Well, good luck with that, feminists. Y'all are looking unhappy. And the wrinkles are coming on because, being unhappy brings on wrinkles. It's true. I'm sorry, it's true. So, all right, back to the show sheet. I have so much content here because today I was like, Lord, please give me a show. And now I have a show, and I also have great callers, and so I'm grateful for all that. Okay, so the impeachment hysteria is still going on. And I found this little bit of audio from Newt Gingrich. So we'll listen to that, and then I want to jump into these companies exiting China. This is fascinating because Donald Trump said it would happen. And everyone says he's a liar and he's not that smart. And all. Yeah, but did he not say they would leave? And now it's happening? Okay, I could gloat about that, but here's number 4.
Sure, I think they look nuts. I mean, Mueller himself looked nuts. You come out and you say, the Russians that we've indicted are innocent until proven guilty. But now the president, we haven't proven him innocent yet. Just think about that paragraph and what Mueller said. And now you got the Democrats who are saying, all right, well, maybe we can't impeach him, but we all know he's a criminal. Well, how do they know that? But I think you have to start out where the fascist left is. Free speech means you're not allowed to speak. The whole model of the way they deal with things, if you say anything wrong, you're either homophobic, Islamophobic, something. And so their normal behavior is to just make stuff up. There's no evidence that the president has been guilty of anything, and that's you had 2 years. Mueller had 15 left-wing Democratic lawyers, all of them, by the way, very good prosecutors. He had, I think, $30 million. He locked up at least 2 people in solitary confinement for lengths of time that, frankly, are un-American, and he couldn't find anything. Now, at that point, the Democrats ought to go on and talk about policy and recognize that this is really a dry hole. They're not going to get anything good out of this.
So they're not. This is what I would hope would happen. And one thing I am confident of, because I had a friend tell me the other day that he doesn't expect things to get better, that the censorship will get worse because of the time frame in history that we're in, where some people believe, and please don't get upset with me for sharing what he shared with me, as if to say that you are wrong if this is not what you believe. None of us know the day, the hour, or the time when Jesus will return. Okay, so that's accepted. That's biblical. I didn't write that, didn't make it up, not responsible for it. But we do know that the signs of the times will point to the hastening of Christ's return, right? So when we hear about the censorship, the crackdowns on freedom, the oppression of Christians around the world, and even oppression, things that approach oppression here in our country, like what happened with Barronelle Stutzman and Jack Phillips and all the different things that are happening across the country where liberals have just had it with Christians and they're ready to just throw down. They're ready to put and the anti-Semitism, the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe and even seeing signs of it here in this country. And so when we see that, it points to, well, things may get worse. But I also am of the mindset that the closer we get to the Father, it can get worse, but we know what happens at the end. We know the end of the story. We know that we don't just win, we are victorious in every way. And that in the end, we will be, ultimately, the reward is just too great to quantify, to describe, for us to even be able to understand. And so what we just have to hold on to that, right? So if you're looking at the kind of in hysteria with the Democrats or the different things that are happening, what we get to do is be excited about it, be happy about it, knowing that God is in control and that he will be able to give us joy. Ultimately, we will be joyful in spite of our circumstances, no matter what. And also the Democrats are going to look stupid because their brains are the size of ping pong balls. Okay. When we get back, we have Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft.
It's amazing but true. When it comes to one of America's biggest household expenditures, healthcare, a lot of people think they've got no choice. People are used to thinking we have to do it this way. but they don't. Yes, you have the freedom to choose an alternative with your health care. It's MediShare, and it costs way less than the alternatives. The typical family saves $500 a month, not a year, a month. And if you're single, this can save you a lot too. And let's face it, a big reason MediShare is 400,000 people strong. It just works. They've shared over $3 billion in medical bills, so they can help share your needs too. Joining MediShare for so many people is one of those things that makes you say, why didn't I do this before? So yes, the time has come for something better. Look into joining MediShare and see why so many people are opting out of the old way and into the new. Why not look into this? Just call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson. A phrase they often use is, he who defines the words often wins the debate. I've seen this play out in debates, discussions, and interviews. I've also seen how the way you define terms can influence the reader's perception. That is why the latest information about the style guides being used in the media are a reminder to exercise discernment. Take the issue of climate change, or what used to be called global warming. That change alone should signal the fact that words and definitions are being manipulated so that readers could come to a particular conclusion. The Guardian recently updated its style guide in order to show their increased concern over the environment. For example, climate change will now be referred to as a climate emergency crisis or breakdown. The term global warming doesn't seem hot enough, so it will now be called global heating. And a skeptic of all this will now be called a climate science denier. Abortion is another illustration. For years, I've complained that the terms are not parallel. Someone who supports abortion is not called pro-abortion, but is given the more neutral term pro-choice. However, you can't call someone pro-life because they must be labeled anti-abortion. Jared Stepman reports that NPR has now told its reporters that certain words are off limits. Those would be the terms pro-life, late-term abortion, fetal heartbeat, and partial birth. Then you might wonder, what are you supposed to call a partial birth abortion? The term of choice is intact dilation and extraction. I doubt anyone outside the medical field even knows what that means. Also off limits are terms like abortion doctor and abortion clinics. These changes seem aimed to try to obscure what happens in abortion clinics and manipulate language that can disguise what abortion really is. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view. For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey there, welcome back to the program. Find out more about me at stacyontheright.com and at stacyontheright on Twitter and Instagram. It's my pleasure to welcome my friend. He's the Missouri Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft. He's also an American attorney, engineer, and politician. He's the 40th Secretary of State of the great Show Me State of Missouri. Jay, thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm afraid my voice is a little bit gone. There was something last night that I was doing a lot of yelling and screaming and celebrating about.
Something happened last night. I wonder why you were, so exuberantly expressing yourself. What could that have been?
Stanley's Cup has finally come to stay in St. Louis.
I'm so excited. So I had on my gear yesterday. So my husband, he doesn't watch hockey, right? And I can't say that I watch hockey often, but when it's something like this, like I've been paying attention, and last night I was into it. And I just was thinking to myself, we're going to win this. We're going to win this. And we did.
It was a spectacular game. And it wasn't a game about participation. It wasn't a game about whether people just showed up to play. It was a competition. It was both teams trying as hard as they could, fighting it out within the rules. And, of course, Missouri was victorious. The Blues won. It was awesome.
It was. And so now some of our friends have the Stanley Cup as their Facebook Abby, and it's such a interesting looking thing, this big, huge, enormous Stanley Cup. And I can't wait till it gets here. This is just, it's a great moment for us. And I loved how yesterday, all this week, other sports teams in Missouri have been responding and supporting the Blues and, overflow, showing the game in the Cardinals stadium, all that stuff. It was so nice to see all of us together, not fighting, just being Missourians.
That's Missouri, just like the way Jefferson City came together after the tornado and everyone helped out. I mean, that's just the way life ought to be. It's not the coast, it's the Midwest, and that's why I love living here.
Me too. So speaking of Jeff City, there's this. So first of all, we've been so excited, and we even had a rally last Friday where we were speaking and praying and enjoying ourselves over the passage and signing into law of HB 126, Missouri's heartbeat bill, by our governor, Governor Parsons. And so in response to that, the liberals are obviously really upset. They're angry. And someone, kind of an unexpected person, has put forward not just, I think, not one, but three. There have been 3 initiative petitions put forward, and that they would bring the heartbeat bill to a referendum vote that people would vote for. And what they do is do a ton of really negative, false advertising for months leading up to it and get the entire state to vote against a piece of legislation that was passed and enacted by a duly elected legislature through the will of the people.
Yeah, there have been 3 referendum petitions. One was filed by the ACLU. 2 were filed by an attorney for a businessman in Joplin, Missouri, David Humphreys. And they would try to put something that the legislature said was an emergency, that it needed to go into effect to protect the health and welfare of the people of Missouri. They'd try to delay the implementation of that law. Missouri does allow for referendums. It's in our Constitution, but the Constitution specifically says that if you have a law that is necessary for the immediate safety, public welfare, health of the people of the state, and the legislature finds that and passes it with the appropriate 2/3 vote, it may not be referred to the people. So those first 2 referendums, I looked at the law, I looked at the Constitution and what the Supreme Court had said, and I had no choice but to reject those referendums. The second referendum petition would have just put a portion of the law before the people, and Missouri's Constitution, unlike other constitutions, does not allow for a portion of a law to be referred to the people. It's all or nothing. So I had to reject that third referendum petition also.
So all 3, just to be clear here, all 3 have been rejected. What do you think they're going to do now?
Well, on 2 of them, we've already been sued. We had our first hearing in court on Tuesday. It was somewhat comical. The judge had to let the other side know kind of at the very beginning that they had, frankly, screwed up what they had filed with the court and said, look, if you want to try to amend what you filed to make it make sense, we'll let you do that. So we're going to be back in court on Monday. But the precedent's clear. The people of Missouri have a constitution, and that constitution does not allow for a referendum of a law that's already in effect. It does not allow for a partial referendum. And if the people of Missouri want to change that, they may, but that's not for a court to change. That's for the people to change. The Constitution of Missouri has never been changed without a vote of the people, and we're not going to start that now.
So you've been really strong on this, you and the governor, and I know that doesn't come easily. You had a lot of pushback. I know you get a lot of really angry constituents on the opposing side of the pro-life issue who, they're trying to get you to come around to their view. How do you withstand the onslaught? How do you stand up on this issue? And I know you're deeply pro-life, you believe this, but it's still a question worth asking, especially for people who we all face opposition in our lives, but you're at one of those, you're over the target. You are very visible and in public leadership over the entire state. And this issue is not just like a hot button. It's like a blazing volcanic fire here in Missouri.
I always tell my wife that I don't go looking for trouble, but she would suggest that I'm the sort of person that when I find it, I dig in. And I have the great privilege of representing the people of the state as their Secretary of State. And for me, it's what does the law say? What does the law require? We are a nation of laws and not of men. And it's not about what is polling better or not at any given time. There's a process that has to be followed. And for me, it's really easy just to stand on what the law and the Constitution says. Now, having said that, it was nice that the law required that. I have a 10-year-old son that tried to be born at 20 weeks, was born at 25 weeks. That's in the second trimester. He was alive. He was a child that entire time. So, when I have seen that child that I was told would die every day for 5 weeks, and when he was finally born, he fit in the palm of my hand, was 1.25 pounds, spent 4.5 months in the NICU before he got out, spent about, a third of the first 2 years of his life in the hospital. I believe that life is precious. But in this issue, it was very easy for me because the law was clear, and I was thankful that that's the way the law and the Constitution read.
So that's a very personal story that really is, it's the kind of testimonial that I wish I could hear given in the face of these abortion supporters, because everything they're saying about what we're dealing with here, the life issue, everything they're saying is untrue and not scientifically supported, and also anecdotally and statistically inaccurate, because we now know that viability we keep getting closer and closer to the first trimester for viability. Like, we're literally able to save babies who, as you said, fit a baby that fits in the palm of your hand, and then that baby can grow up and be just as healthy and functioning as anyone else. And that's a life that's worth living. It's a life that's worth saving. The rabidity and the it's just like a odor, like an angry, disgusting, foul stench that's coming from these Planned Parenthood supporters. It's just so antithetical to what you just shared. So there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about. We have some more time here. So tell me about this judge and the situation with the Planned Parenthood where, and I've been following this, but I don't understand how Planned Parenthood doesn't have to follow the same laws and regulations for safety that the Missouri Health Department puts out for every clinic, eye care clinics, outpatient care clinics, cosmetic clinics. Planned Parenthood is in violation of the Missouri Health Department's requests for safety. Yet a judge has said they can remain open and their license cannot be suspended. And he's giving them special, basically dispensation to continue to operate just because they do abortions.
My understanding, and I haven't followed that case as closely because I've got several lawsuits where I'm named, so I'm a little bit more focused on those. Yeah. But my understanding is what the judge has said is that the department has to make a decision on the license. It has to be an up or down, yes or no, so that there then can be judicial review for whether or not the clinic can stay open. I think it's interesting that he's allowed them to continue on past their license. I would say clearly in American jurisprudence, judges have frequently had their thumb down in favor of abortionists. You look at some of the laws that seemingly restrict free speech of people that are pro-life, and judges have they create zones where you're not allowed to speak up and protect life and other things. I think anytime you are on the side of trying to protect life and trying to save those children from being aborted, it's like the deck is stacked against you once you go to court. And I'm really thankful that Missouri is doing what it's doing, and that they're following the law, that they're following the right process, and I think that lives will be saved because of it.
You know, I am too. I echo your comments, but it also brings into stark relief something that we have kind of maybe dropped the ball on a little bit, but now we're seeing the president really play catch up fast, and that is we need better quality judges who would rule based on what the Constitution says, not their personal political ideology. The president has been so good about bringing forward great candidates, and then Mitch McConnell has been leading the Senate on confirming these judges and filling our courts with people who believe in the Constitution. And if anything demonstrates why that's so important, it's this story that we're discussing about this judge. He's not, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, don't play one on TV, I leave the legal parts to you, but I don't feel like he ruled in a way that really honors what the Missouri Constitution says or gives deference to the Missouri Department of Health.
We clearly have a problem with the way we select judges and with some of the judges we have on the bench. In 2016, the people of Missouri passed a constitutional amendment to allow a photo ID requirement in the state. I will be back in court before the Missouri Supreme Court in July because we had a judge tell us we couldn't enforce that last November. Even though he said it wasn't unconstitutional, even though 63% of the voting public said, we want this, even though the plaintiffs couldn't point to a single individual that was stopped from voting, and we could point to individuals that were allowed to vote under the new law but not under the old law, we were told that we couldn't enforce it. We definitely have a problem with the judiciary, and we need the legislature and the executive to stand up and say, wait a minute, our country is not run by the judiciary. We have 3 branches of the government, and we need to stand up for the rule of law and for what the law actually says.
And we know that this is their preferred mechanism for overturning the will of the people. People vote and put Republicans in charge of the legislature here in Missouri. If you want this kind of, Marxist, fascist, communist type, dealings, you can move to Illinois. It's really close. Just move over there. But
well, they sure need people with money though. They can tax.
Well, they really need more bodies. But what's funny about it, Jay, is that this is the mechanism. We see it every single time. If Republican voters in the state of Missouri, and often independents and Democrats also support these policies, otherwise how could they get passed? We pass something, and then what they do is some activist or the ACLU just takes it straight to the court, and the court nullifies the will of the people. We need better judges who will not do the things that they feel like, Democrats want them to do, but they will really look at what our Constitution says.
I cannot agree with you more. That's what our country is based on. We don't let one dictator or one individual. You cannot have a free society without knowing what the law is and being able to clearly read it yourself. When you have to have a court tell you, no, this is what the word the means or is means, that isn't what you think it means, you truly can't have a free society.
All right. Well, what I got to say is, first of all, let's go Blues again. I have to say it again. I could keep saying it.
It was
cool.
awesome.
It was so cool. And then also, thank you so much for coming on. I got a friend who, a bunch of my friends will, like, if there's something going on, they'll say, call this legislator. And so I get the text message. I'm like, ooh, I've got to get him on the show. So I called and spoke to someone in the office. I was like, it's Stacy Washington. I want to have Mr. Ashcroft on the show. And, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, okay. And she transferred me over. And then, of course, I thought I'm going to get lost, like in the voicemail email type thing. But instead, I got a call back immediately. And then I was getting texts yesterday, and I was like, this is happening. I'm so glad. So you have to come back on again and update us when there's next developments here, because this is a national story. And I'm glad to see you at the helm. I think you're the right tool for the right job here, and it's going to get done the right way because you're working this thing through.
I really appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Talk to you again soon. It's Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft. He is really strong on these issues. And the personal backstory there to me is so touching and so relevant. And I would love to see a person who's pro-abortion hear that story and contend with the truths that undergird that. How do you say, well, abortion up until the very last minute, like up until birth. And he was talking about his son being hand-sized, palm of your hand sized. And now is it, a kid running around just doing everything, probably getting into stuff and, giving them a run for their money. How do you reconcile those two things? My hope is that you wouldn't reconcile those two things, that you would recognize the glory of God in our medicine and in the fields of pediatrics, that we're able to save babies at that stage. That's where we should be, not pro-abortion, not pro quote unquote choice, which means nothing. That's just a euphemism for murder. And you know what I'm sick of? Euphemisms, among other things. Also, brains the size of ping pong balls. Sick of that too. All right, so I promised you more tech manufacturing companies exiting China. Nintendo and Sharp plan exits. This is against intense leveraging being applied by President Trump. Beijing doubled down and threatened punishment against any company that would leave China and begin manufacturing elsewhere. You know what? Eat it, communists. You can't stop. You can't stop us from leaving. That's a totalitarian response, by the way, and it's totally expected. And China is counting on prior Western investment being so significant that a corporation would be reluctant to withdraw. And Sharp, and Nintendo said, yeah, we're leaving. All right. I have more stories for you right after this. I'm Stacy Washington.
She was a baby girl left abandoned on a doorstep in China. Our friends met her in that orphanage that had saved her life, and they adopted her. And believe me, she's not an orphan anymore. There are a lot of folks who have felt orphaned for much of their lives, either left behind or left alone. Maybe you know the feeling. Well, just like that little girl, someone went a long way to get you. Someone who chose you. He's adopted a lot of spiritual orphans into his family, and he's ready to adopt you too. Jesus said, "I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you." We've been cut off from the Heavenly Father by choosing to run a life that He was supposed to run, so we feel spiritually fatherless. But God's Son came all the way from heaven to that awful cross to pay for your sins and give you the chance to be His. You can belong to Him by saying, "Jesus, I'm yours." It's something we'd love to help you do. Call us at 888-NEED-HIM or go to chataboutjesus.com. You will never feel orphaned again.
The Ministry of Preborn meets abortion-minded women right where they are. When a young mom sees her baby on ultrasound, she's 80% more likely to keep her baby.
And I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
This mom chose life for her baby.
She's been such a joy. Her name even means rebirth and sort of being raised up from the ashes. I now see my daughter, and I cannot imagine my life without my happy, lovely, joyful, smart baby, and I'm so grateful.
Preborn runs and leads Christian pregnancy centers all over the country. To find out more, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Your love can save a life.
Military Matters.
For most people, therapy sessions happen on a leather couch. For Brandon Webb, it's his 1985 Cicada Epsilon.
For me, flying is very therapeutic. I get a shot of adrenaline, but it's kind of like yoga and meditation because you're just forced to concentrate on one thing and you can't think about anything else. So it's kind of this mind eraser.
Webb spent time in Iraq and Afghanistan as a Navy SEAL sniper. And for all too many war veterans, returning home from the military means coping with post-traumatic stress disorder. To help combat that anxiety, Webb found an outlet.
So could I get my therapy session with you then?
Of course, yeah, and I don't charge that much.
Taking to the skies over Manhattan, Webb didn't disappoint with the adrenaline, doing a 360 loop-the-loop off the coast of Manhattan, followed by an up-close view of the Statue of Liberty. But Webb understands that this therapy may not be for everybody. He just knows it works for him.
Just for me, it's been a positive way to kind of deal with my own transition.
With Military Matters, Christina Partsinevelos, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
This is a fairly toothless gesture by the House to show their contempt for the rule of law and for the American people by continuing this Russia investigation and Mueller investigation charade. I mean, this is really Jerry Nadler kind of looking at the disemboweled entrails of this Mueller investigation and seeing what he can salvage from it. It's quite a pathetic spectacle. But the Attorney General has struck the right tone with these people, is going to give them a little bit of information if they want it, although it's not their job to see it.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the program. We are so glad to be with you today. And I did start off this story just before the end of the last segment. And what I want to do is just kind of wrap it up. China counting on a major prior Western investment. So basically saying, look, they've spent so much money here. They have everything set up here. Their systems are here. They're not going to be able to pull out. Well, yes and no. With the tariffs being at the current level, companies are having to scramble and make decisions that mean if they have to do investment someplace else, they're basically looking at their bottom line and they're saying the tariffs are going to cost us this, which means we pass that price on to our consumers, which increases the price, which means our consumers are going to look at goods from this company over here. So the cost of that is this. And the cost of moving our production to Vietnam or South Korea looks like it's this. So in the end, we know Vietnam, South Korea, these are more Western friendly countries, not communist. So we can probably count on much longer term relations, and we don't have to worry about them stealing our intellectual property. So the gamble is one that ultimately it is the most important thing that can be done. You have to look to the future and say, this has worked in the past. Being in China was actually a great deal in the past, but in the future, it looks like it might be a better deal to move someplace else. And it's not small potatoes for Nintendo and Sharp to make this this change. So these companies are looking for financial security and stability. And so the first announcement comes from Nintendo Company. It comes out of Tokyo. Nintendo moves some Switch production out of China. They're moving some of the production of their Switch video game console, which we're Switch users here, I should say. Daughter, the youngest, is a Switch user. The Switch video game console to Southeast Asia from China to limit the impact of possible U.S. tariffs on Chinese-made electronics. And this is people who work in Nintendo's supply chain who are reporting this. This is another example of manufacturers adapting to the tariff threat. Kyoto-based Nintendo has traditionally relied on the Chinese factories of contract assembly companies to make their video game hardware, which includes the Switch console, which was introduced in 2017. Now, Taiwan's Foxconn Technology Group said Tuesday that they were ready to move assembly of Apple's iPhones out of China if necessary. And Japan's Sharp Corporation, which is controlled by Foxconn, said last week that it planned to move production of personal computers to Taiwan or Vietnam. This is huge. So remember, President Trump highlighted on May 13th that there would be an exodus of multinational manufacturing away from China. And let me say that one more time, because one thing I hate is if, like, just for example, if I say, hey, you know what, if you do that, you might not be happy to see that happen. And then later when it happens, everybody's just whistling Dixie and acting like I didn't warn you. Don't act like I didn't warn you. This is the same thing, only this is Donald Trump, which makes it far more important than any tiny prognostications I might have made about tertiary matters here right where I am on the ground. The president said, there will be an exodus of multinational manufacturing away from China if they don't come to the table and start dealing with us equal to equal. Well, he also said corporations will shift their purchase agreements, manufacturing, and assembly plans to ASEAN countries outside the investment risk zone that is now China. So some of the nuance, which includes specific references within President Trump's tweets, have to do with Japan, Shinzo Abe, Vietnam, President Trang Dai-quang, and South Korea, or Chorus, the Philippines, and India, who are all positioned to pick the business up. And you know how this works. You have seen it so many times on the personal level. When one person drops the ball, there's always somebody else who's equipped who can step in and be like, bing, bam, boom, I'm right there. I've always been right here, but now it's my chance to show I can do a little something. Throw me some of that business. And in the business world, companies are always looking for these kinds of vulnerabilities. They're always poised and ready. Their 5-year and 10-year plans include opportunities to pick up business from other companies that might be, you know how it is, a company gets huge and then the family members start marrying and getting divorced and it's privately owned. And before you know it, huge portions of the country or of the company are now owned by people who are divorced from the original family members. And then those family members are trying to get those pieces of the company back, but they've overspent, they're overextended, they can't do it. So then what happens? Others come in and they start just snapping up what they can because they're thinking, if I can keep snapping this up, at some point, it might be available for me to do a little bit of hostile taking over or even some friendly taking over. I like this business. That's how Anheuser-Busch came to be Anheuser-Busch InBev. That little Belgian man came over here almost 40 years ago and took a tour, the same tour that me and my family, my husband and the kids and I took this tour back when they were teeny tiny tater tots. And he saw the beer cans and the beer bottles on a conveyor belt that run all the way around the entire factory, and all the walls are made of glass, and the beer gets put into each bottle, and then it carries on down the assembly thing, all of it on like a snake, like a ribbon. And when it gets down to the bottom, then the caps get put on, and then they get gingerly dropped by machine into these boxes, cases of beer for shipping out to the distributorships all over the country. And the snake-like apparatus that carries the bottles and the cans runs around a glass enclosed room, which is their boardroom, also known as their war room, that was made, and inside it was a huge conference table made out of a single piece of wood from a tree that was apparently 800 years old, that Anheuser-Busch, the original Anheuser guy, he found it, cut the tree down, had it milled, one piece of wood that 18 people could sit around, and then made custom leather chairs and put it in this conference room when they remodeled the factory. And all of the buildings that the bottling, the original headquarters is located in, they're these old clay red brick buildings, turn of the century and before, all located. Anheuser-Busch has almost like their own little town down there. We used to live just over the highway from it. And so this little Belgian man came to St. Louis and toured because it's a public tour. You even get to see Clydesdales on the tour. They have a stable inside of the area that you can walk through. You can pet the Clydesdales, etc. He takes the tour and he says to himself, it's like 25, 30 years ago. He says, one day, he's a beer company owner in Belgium. He says, one day my company will be big enough to buy this company. He went back to Belgium and told his board, we will one day own Anheuser-Busch. I've been to it and I've seen it, and I want nothing more than to own it for ourselves. I want that to be a part of our company. And a few people in the board meeting were kind of laughed and said, that's crazy. It's family owned. It's never been up for sale. Why would they ever let a plum like that go? And then after that, he kept working on growing their Belgian beer company, and they expanded outside of Belgium and went into other European nations and bought other companies. And every time some Anheuser-Busch stock came up because of a divorce, their company bought it. Every time some of that stock came up in chunks, they bought it. And then I don't know how long it's been, if it's been 9 or 10 years or whatever they bought it. They bought Anheuser-Busch. It was a big announcement in the newspaper here that the last bit of stock that pushed it from 51% ownership by the Bush family to 49%, and that they were susceptible to a hostile takeover by some little Belgian man. Well, they didn't call him a little Belgian man, but you understand what I'm saying. And then before you know it, people were freaking out here in St. Louis because Anheuser-Busch is an original St. Louis institution, an original, major corporate company, Fortune 500, just the whole nine, major employer for this region, everything. And I just remember that people were not only freaking out, but there were all these discussions. And what did that little Belgian man do when they completed the sale of the company? They were talking about selling off Grant's Farm, because Grant's Farm is owned by the Bush family. Well, they didn't do that, even though it's not profitable. They don't charge enough for you to get in. You only pay for parking. It has no entrance fee. Well, it didn't then. They didn't sell that off because it was a public relations nightmare. But they did go in and cut that conference table into pieces and haul it out to herald the new ownership of Anheuser-Busch InBev, as in, this ain't Anheuser-Busch only anymore. And that is that is just proof positive that if the Chinese think they've got something that is ironclad and that they cannot be taken over, their manufacturing hegemony cannot be sliced into pieces and hauled out and thrown onto a pile of wood and burned, that they're somehow immune to other countries and other companies taking over the business that they're tossing away by not coming to the table with Donald Trump. They haven't read enough business stories. They haven't read enough business books. They don't understand capitalism, and they don't understand the business mind. And that's the danger of communism. It makes you unable to understand other mechanisms because they're so foreign to you because of the totalitarian nature of everything that you're subjected to. So it is fascinating to watch, because these are just the warning shots over the bow. Nintendo, Sharp Corporation. For Foxconn to be making these kinds of moves, it's do or die time. They can come to the table at any point and negotiate based on the parameters that the president and his team put forward when they first started talking. And you would hope that they would, but all they want to do is steal our intellectual property and supplant us as the world superpower. So why should we stay there? This could be the best thing that President Trump could accomplish during his presidency so far. It's getting American companies out of China. So, the communists are only going to do what they know how to do, right? They're not going to change their stripes. They're not going to figure out new things. They're going to do what they've always done in the same totalitarian way. They have a communist country. They have a communist controlled market. Their entire system is communistic. So the reaction from them is actually pretty predictable. Not to negotiate, not to try to figure out how they can make something work, but to just make threats. Whatever. Threaten away. The state, and so the danger here is that when communists suspect that they're losing control of something, they move to exert utter and complete control over it. So what companies have to do now is they have to kind of be aware that if you make moves without actually having moved your stuff, you could lose everything you already have there. It's not like you're going to have an orderly transition where you send a bunch of moving orders over there and move your equipment and all the stuff you've built and invested your stuff over. You've invested time and money and resources in China, and you're going to go over and get your equipment and move it to, Vietnam or one of these other countries. You're not just going to go over and move all of your equipment to India or the Philippines. No. If the Chinese government gets wind of you moving your operation out of there, you might even lose American executives you have working over there. They might be held because it's not widely reported because everybody has this, leftists have this love affair with communist countries. Are you aware that China will actually withhold your ability to leave the country as an American if they don't like something your company has done? Or if they don't like something you've said while you're in China, they just won't let you leave. And so you're not kidnapped. You're not a political prisoner. People just can't find you. You're just unable to be found. Your family members over in the United States might be like, I haven't been able to get him by phone. Yeah, you haven't been able to get him because the Chinese are holding him because they didn't like something he said or they don't like something that the company's planning on doing. So our companies should be very, very careful how they telegraph their moves if they're thinking about leaving China and moving their manufacturing elsewhere. Because the communists ain't playing around with you. They don't have time. They don't want time. They just want to control you. We went over there and we took the cheap labor. We gave away our intellectual property and we made deals with the devil. And now that people are trying to pull out, some will get out clean. Some will be smart about their moves and they'll get out clean. But anybody who's not smart and doesn't understand who they're dealing with, they're going to have problems trying to get out of China. But I like it because guess who said that's what they were going to do? Promises made, promises kept. I'll probably get my little campaign picture out and put it up on the wall here. Leave it up for a couple of days. Yeah, maybe for the rest of the week. Promises made, promises kept. The president has not delivered on immigration just yet, but we still have, and this is the last minute of the show, but I was supposed to get to this yesterday. Mexico City. Reuters is reporting that the Mexican finance ministry said on Thursday they blocked the bank accounts of 26 people for their alleged involvement in human trafficking as Mexico broadens their migration clampdown under intense pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump. Yes. Get it, Donald Trump. Make something happen. We're going into the 2020 election season, and I want to see promises made, promises kept on immigration. Thank you for the trade promises made, promises kept. I'll take that, and I'll raise you an immigration promise. Let's get it done. That's the show for today. God bless from the Heartland. I'm Stacy Washington. Back with you tomorrow.